Well, welcome to Jodie's Sewing Studio. I don't know how many of you have made those burrito method pillowcases, but personally I do not like them at all because they have a very time consuming, super bulky seam as your side seam. So we are going to be working with the cuff and the body of the pillow. I'm not going to do a little flange on this particular one. I want you to notice this finished pillowcase here is going to be basically our goal. And so to start with, I want to use a really good quality, super soft. It's got to feel really great to your cheek when you lay down to the pillow, right? So anyway, so we have this lovely organic fabric from Birch Fabrics. The body of the pillowcase is the exact same width of the band of the pillowcase. I'm making these for my boat, so we will have seagulls underway with us. Anyway, so you will notice here that I have a band, and my band is actually 12 inches and the body is 24 inches. You can decide which length you want. It just depends on your pillow. The band and the body of the pillow need to be the exact width. So the fold line of the band needs to be laid exactly on top of the fold line of the body of the pillowcase. So my fold lines are right on top of each other, and they are perfectly parallel to my selvages, as you can see here. And just a reminder, when you're working with a variety of fabric lines, your selvages may not be the same width. So now I'm going to use a ruler that's designed for cutting, to use with a rotary blade, and I'm going to make sure that my ruler is long enough, and I'm going to remove the selvages. So my cut needs to be, yes, perfectly perpendicular to the cut edges of the band and the pillowcase, and I'm going to cut through all layers. I also want to remind you, for safety purposes, and if you want to preserve the length and life of your rotary blade, do not hold your blade at an angle. Hold it straight, perfectly perpendicular to the mat. You're going to remove the fabric, the selvage, get it out of your way. And now what we have is a band and a body that are the exact same width. I've got 2/3 yard and 1/3 yard. Okay. So now I am going to go to my overlocker. My blades are engaged, and my blade is going to be my seam guide. So I'm putting right sides together of my band, and I'm sewing on the side that's opposite the fold, or I'm serging on the side that's opposite the fold. Then I'm going to chain stitch off a little bit, and I'm going to have my body of the pillowcase, folding it right sides together, perfectly lining up those edges. And I'm going to, once again, use the blade as my seam guide. I'm going to shave just a tiny, tiny, tiny bit off as I serge along that side. Now I'm only serging the side. I am not going to serge the bottom yet. And I'm going to ask that you just trust me on this, because I have a really fabulous corner technique to show you in a few minutes. So anyhow, we will continue to serge, and then we just serge off the edge, and we leave at least an inch of the chain hanging on the edge of the fabric. And that's just so that my fabric stays securely in place while I move on to the ironing board. So I'm going to brag a little bit. I love using my Laura Star ironing system because there's a fan built into the ironing board. It sucks the steam out, and I do not burn my fingers. So now I'm going to iron my seam, or press my seam of the case, the body of the case. And then in a couple of minutes, or a couple of seconds actually, I'm going to press the seam of the band. And what I want you to think about in your mind is your seams are going to nest. So if I press the seam in one direction on the case, I advise you to press the seam in the opposite direction on the band. Although it's not critical, because as you attach the band to the case, you could just shift your seams over a little bit if you want to. So anyway, here you'll see me pressing the seam of the band. I am trimming the chain stitch off, or the chain of stitches off, and but I want to leave about a 1-inch tail. Okay, my next step is to fold my band so that my cut edges are, yes, perfectly lined up, and put a nice press in the fold. And I'm going to do this all the way around the band itself. Now I want you to notice that's my seam area that I'm just pulling towards me right now. It's flat, unlike the burrito method where you have a French seam with multiple layers of bulky fabric. So anyway, I'm going to continue pressing, and as I press, I can clearly see that my cut edges are exactly on top of each other. If you're new to this, you want to just really pay attention to that. From here, I'm going to take this band, and now I need to insert one inside the other. And just a note, if you have a fabric that is directional, just pay attention to it, because the direction of the seagulls, for example, on this particular fabric, or on the fabric of the image that I have that has little boats on it and such, the direction might be important to you, and you just have to decide what that direction is. So we are inserting one tube into the other with right sides together. I highly recommend clips. The clover clips happen to be my personal favorite. But anyway, I always start by clipping the seams first, and then I pull my tubes apart and find the opening that's directly across, and then I put a clip there. So it's kind of like putting one clip on one end, one clip on the other, and then I'm going to evenly distribute clips in between those two clips. I recommend anywhere between 4 and 8 clips, and it really does depend on you, what you're comfortable with. I will be honest with you, I've been doing this method for, 20 plus years, and I seldom use clips or pins, but when I'm teaching people how to do things, I highly recommend clips or pins until you get really familiar with the action of the feed dogs on the machine that you're working with. You will see, 6 to 8 clips here. And I am choosing to do the clipping at the ironing board because it's more ergonomically, let's just say, comfortable, because I can stand and do that. Once I have it all clipped, I will go back to the overlocker to start the serging process. And again, I'm just checking to make sure my 3 cut edges are perfectly lined up. And now you see I have a tube, an opening that I need to stitch with my overlocker. Now, just a little FYI, if you don't own an overlocker, you can do this on a conventional sewing machine, but then you would finish the edge with a zigzag on the cut edges. So you'll notice that I have the tube laying on top of my overlocker, and I am using one of Bernina's air threading overlockers, and this one happens to be the L890. It's like a personal favorite of mine. And as I serge, you will also notice that my cut edges they're actually lined up with the blade, the upper blade, which that you can't see real close up here, but I felt like this was a better view for you to see. And I might be shaving little tiny fibers off as I go. Now, one of the things I love about this particular overlocker is there is a lever right under the little stitch table that I could just push away from me, and it will lower my upper blade, and I am getting ready to do that. I am allowing myself to cut off the tails from the side seams, and now I'm really close, so I'm going to stop. I am going to lower my blade, and then I'm going to continue overlocking about 2 inches over my beginning overlocking stitches. And this time I'm not cutting anything off because I don't want to cut my stitches. And I will leave a tail of about 4 inches. In a couple of seconds I'll show you what I do with these tails, because there's some really cool ways to bury your tails. You could just cut the tail off if you want. Your pillowcase is not going to fall apart, but I do have a nice trick for you. So the next step is I'm going to go back to the ironing board, and I'm going to press the seam toward the body. Now we're going to do the bottom edge, and the bottom edge is really kind of nice if you have a nice little corner there. So I fold the seam from the side towards me, and that's what I'm doing right now. And then I'm going to serge that flat as if I was serging it in a pressed position. What this does is it gives you a really nice corner when you turn it right side out. I use this technique on pillows. I use it on pockets on garments that are lying pockets. I use it on some collars and some facings, just depending, and hems on, let's say, camp shirts and stuff like that. So I'll often teach an overlocker pillowcase class like this in preparation for teaching garment skills too. So anyway, now my pillowcase is completely stitched. It has taken me less than 10 minutes to completely stitch this pillowcase using this method. And I'm going to show you my little seam burying trick. I'm going to take a large-eyed needle and I'm going to insert that needle through the stitches backwards like that, because the point's going to get caught in the fabric. And then I'm going to put just the beginning part of the chain in, and then I'm just going to pull it through. That's going to bury the chain. That stitch will never come undone unless you cut it. And that's how I bury all of my stitches. My last step is to turn this right side out. I usually turn it by pushing that little folded corner through first. And by the way, that gorgeous jacket I'm wearing, I made that. So you can see that I'm turning my pillowcase, and I'll give it a final pressing. And when I say final pressing, I mean final pressing, because I will not iron my pillowcases when I pull them out of the laundry. And that's one of the reasons I don't put a flange on them. A lot of quilters will put flanges on them because it's really cute, it's really pretty, but then you have to iron it or you have to top stitch it down. And to be honest with you, when I make pillowcases, I make them on the overlocker and I can crank them out. This video is for all you quilters that make pillowcases all the time. Quilters tend to be extremely generous people. They make pillowcases and donate them to hospitals. They donate them to social services for children that are being pulled out of their homes. They donate them to cancer patients. And why not learn how to make them fast? Anyway, there you go. Press well and stuff with a pillow. You are done. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is Jodie from Jodie Sewing Studio, and I am also the owner of Rain Tree Quilting Fabrics in fabulous Juneau, Alaska. We are located in the Mendenhall Mall, where all the locals shop. Remember, sewing should be fun. And if you have the right tools, the right fabric, and the knowledge, it is.